Good evening, Jessica and Joyce. Well, we heard from both sides give their final arguments in this trial, with Assistant Attorney General Melanie Tratnick saying that it was obvious that Troyer had filed a false report, whereas the defense and Bremner argue that Troyer is a good man and would not waste police resources. The defense argued to dismiss the charge of making a false or misleading claim to a public servant because South Sound 911 isn't technically a government agency, so the charge doesn't apply. Assistant Attorney General Melanie Tratnick responded that a reasonable person would determine that Shadel is a government employee. Judge Jeffrey Jahns decided to allow Shadel back on the stand to hear from him.
Do you know whether South Sound 911 meets the legal definition of a government entity?
I do not know.
The judge ultimately decided that Shadel does qualify as a government employee under the legal definition. Then all that was left was to hear final arguments. Tratnick began by saying it was obvious that Troyer made a false report after hearing the multiple inconsistencies in Troyer's account of events, and testimony from Tacoma police officer Chad Lawless, who said he asked Troyer multiple times if he was threatened, and Troyer said no.
It's easy to keep the truth straight when something happens, but it's difficult to keep your facts straight when you're not telling the truth.
After she was finished, Troyer's attorney, Ann Bremner, gave her closing argument. Bremner said it makes no sense that Troyer would waste resources on making a false call, and Troyer never changed his story about being threatened. Bremner also brought up Cedric Altimer, framing him as the aggressor, and claimed his civil lawsuit against Troyer was the real reason Altimer wants Troyer convicted.
If somebody files a lawsuit for $5 million and it's connected to this case, it shows his financial bias and comes into play when you evaluate his testimony and what he claims to have happened to him.
Now that closing arguments have been given, the jury will have to decide if Sheriff Troyer is guilty of the charges brought against him by the state. Live from the Pierce County Courthouse, Lionel Donovan, King 5 News.